It's Auntie Carolyn. Just like we talked about, this is your official Auntie Carolyn and Nani Ride Out cooking show. So you asked for a recipe for zucchini bread, and it's very, very easy. I just want to kind of go through everything here with you, and I even wrote everything down, and I'll put this in the package for you. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your hands are washed, your hair is tied back. There's nothing worse than biting into something and getting one of those long hairs in there. So make sure you do that before you start everything else. Now, I have a lot of basic things here on the table. So you're going to want to make sure before you start that you have all of these things, okay? So box grater, you can use a regular stand-up grater, little short kind too, that's just fine. You need salt. Kosher salt, table salt. I prefer the kosher, but the table salt will work just fine. You need oil, vegetable oil. Do not use olive oil. Olive oil will end up flavoring it. Standard vegetable oil, corn oil is fine. You need cinnamon. You're going to need vanilla, sugar, baking soda. Now, this is an important part on the baking soda. Do not, and I repeat, do not go into the refrigerator and pull out that ancient box in there that probably has pork blood and bits of cheese and all kinds of other stuff in it. You do not want to use that. It's disgusting. If you want your bread to taste like turkey mold, go ahead and get that. But otherwise, get a fresh box and go ahead and keep this for baking. Now, you also need eggs, and you're going to need regular standard baking powder. Now, this is a thing that's going to separate a lot of families. I grew up eating zucchini bread from my mom with tons of nuts. Tons of nuts. Every single bite had a nut in it. You're either a nut person or you're not a nut person. A lot of people aren't nut people that are in this house, but in your house you might have some nut people. So we're going to go ahead and throw some nuts into one loaf, and we're going to throw no nuts into the other loaf. And this particular recipe will make you 2 loaves of zucchini bread. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you do your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients. So we have some regular standard measuring cups here, and I also have one of these handy dandy things. You can have, this particular one is a slider, but you can have any sort of little teaspoon, tablespoon, little measuring spoons. You know, they have ones that are like on the ring. You have a bunch of them together, but it's fine. Okay, so you have everything that you're going to need. Let's go ahead and grate the zucchini first. On your grater, you have the larger hole and this medium-sized hole. That's what you're going to want. These have been washed, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut the end off and get started. So you're going to want about 2 cups of zucchini, and that's a very firm 2 cups. So you're going to pack it down after you've taken all of the liquid out of it. And by liquid, you're going to be able to squeeze this and get quite a bit out. You may not have to put both of these in, but you want a lot of zucchini in that bite. Okay, so I have grated all of this, and you can see that it looks like a lot. I'm going to go ahead and put this off to the side, and you see here, that's quite a bit. What you're going to want to do is squeeze it out. So just have a bowl or anything. You can see all of that liquid coming out. Just go ahead and squeeze it really good. And if some falls in, it's okay. Just kind of want to really squeeze it. Okay, and we have this back on our cutting board. And we'll just go ahead and get rid of this water, and we're going to get 2 full cups here. So we're going to pack this in. That's nice. So there's 1 cup. And we'll get this in there, and that is 2 cups. All right, now we're going to go ahead and get our cutting board all cleared off, and we'll go ahead and get started with the rest of the ingredient. All right, so we went ahead and we have those 2 cups of zucchini. You're going to crack 3 eggs. I like to do the eggs on the side of the table because if you crack it on the side of the bowl, sometimes you can get some shells, and I'm very careful looking at the egg before I pour it in just to make sure that you don't have a bad one in there, and you want to make sure you do that. If you just dump it in, you've ruined kind of everything that you have going. And we're going to go ahead and add the vanilla. So I want 3 tablespoons of vanilla, and the vanilla is more for smell. If you like less vanilla, you can put less in, but that is 3 tablespoons of vanilla, and you're going to want to put your cup of oil in. So a full cup of oil. Just go ahead and measure this out. There we go. Now that is all of our wet ingredients. So what you're going to want are dry ingredients next. Go ahead and get everything wrapped up. You're going to need 2 cups of sugar. So we'll go ahead and put this all in a separate bowl. So let's see, we have 1, and 2. So it's 2 cups of sugar. You have a little bit of sugar residue in there. That's okay. You're going to need cinnamon. And you have this cinnamon here. I'm going to go ahead. And the cinnamon is going to give it a really nice smell, and it's also going to give it kind of a dark color, which you remember from the last time that we made it. It had that nice color to it. So I put a whole tablespoon and maybe another little half in. You can add more or less. It isn't really a taste, but it's a good smell that comes off of it. You're going to need 3 cups of flour. And since I forgot to bring the flour out, we're going to go ahead and pause here, and I'll go grab it. Okay, I'm back. So I went and got the flour. You're going to need 3 cups. And, you know, make it nice and flat. So that's 1. That's almost 2. And that's a nice full 3 cups of flour. Okay, let's get all of that out. All right, you're going to need salt. So any time you use sugar, you also want to use salt. It's really what makes the sweetness come out. So we need a teaspoon. So here is a teaspoon of salt. And you're going to need the same amount of baking soda. So we'll go ahead and get into the baking soda here. And this is going to help puff your bread up. And you're going to need a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. This is just another thing that's going to puff your bread up a little bit. So I only have a 1 teaspoon here, so I'm just going to put a little bit in there. If you have the little measuring spoons that go smaller, I would do that. But if you just have this, it's okay to just take a look, and you want a 1/4 of a teaspoon. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start mixing this together. And I'm going to chop nuts as well because we're going to add some nuts to the second loaf and then we'll mix everything together. So what you're going to want to do, I tend to use my hands a lot, but you can always go get a spoon or a fork or anything that kind of mixes this all together. You want all of this mixed. First, you're feeling kind of for any lumps that are in there. And you want everything that you added mixed evenly. You don't want to get a big salt clump. You don't want to get a big sugar clump. And, you know, I like to do this because I can feel it with my hands. All right, so you have the bigger bowl. You're going to add everything together. Yep. And I'm going to get a big spoon, and I'm going to mix all of that up. All right, so I will be ready. All right, so we're back. Now, a good point was brought up about the wet ingredients. Normally, I would mix the eggs and all of that stuff together, all the wet stuff together first before I combined them, but I forgot the spoon. I now have the spoon, and I'm just going to mix it all together. Now, you want to keep an eye just to make sure that it seems wet enough, not too dry. You also don't want it super liquidy either. You want a nice moist bread, so you're just going to keep scraping the sides of the bowl. And if it looks like it's too dry, you can always add just a touch more oil, but this looks like it's coming together perfectly because it should be very sort of thick, much thicker than a pancake batter. It's got some body to it, and you can see you still have a little bit of that dry in there. There we go. That looks like it's coming together very nicely. All right, so you have this. During that little break, I went ahead and I chopped up a 1/4 cup of walnuts. You can use pecans, you can use any other kind of nuts. I also washed my hands after I was digging in all of the dry ingredients. So what we have are standard loaf pans. You're going to want to go ahead and use these. I have regular loaf pans. I got these because I'm going to be mailing you some zucchini bread that we've made here together today. So you have these little pans. You want to make sure that they're well greased. You don't want the zucchini bread to stick. So I went ahead and I took a little bit of the butter here. These have already been rinsed out, and we're going to go ahead and grease these up and add our batter. So like I said, just take a little bit of butter, put it on a paper towel so your hand doesn't get all greasy. All right. You don't need a ton of butter, but just enough to cover the sides and the bottom. Any standard loaf pan. You don't want to make it in a cake pan. You want it to look like a loaf of bread. So we're going to go ahead and do this first one. So I'm going to take this and put this in here. Try not to drip any on the sides. It will burn in the oven. And you want to go a little more than halfway. And you just kind of do this. Just shake it. And I think one more good scoop. There we go. So that's a little more than halfway, about 3/4 of the way up the pan. So this is our regular zucchini bread. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, and I'm going to, after the second scoop in, I'm going to add these nuts, and I'll cover the nuts with another couple of scoops. So what you want to do right now though is preheat your oven to 325 degrees. So your oven's going to preheat at 325 degrees. After about 45 minutes, you want to go ahead and check on these. It could take up to an hour to bake, but it really depends on the oven. All right, so we will be back once these are all baked. Hi, Nani. Well, these 2 loaves are all done now, and it took actually a little over an hour. You can see that this one has the nuts, and it filled out a little bit more. But when you take them out of the oven, it's still very hot. You want to check by sticking a little stick in and making sure that it comes out clean. If you still have bread and it looks wet and it's clinging to the stick, it means it's not done. So keep that in the oven. So this took a little bit over an hour, and they're all ready to go. So you can decide whether you like it with nuts or without nuts. And I hope you enjoyed this. Keep sending me questions, and I am more than happy to add more recipes to your collection. Bye. I love you.